Welcome to Real Talk, Indiana's premier talk show on real estate investing, where we talk each week about investing your money right here in Central Indiana. The tips, tricks, do's, and don'ts, brought to you by CIREIA, Central Indiana's oldest and largest real estate investing association. Hello there, my name is Vicki Perry, and I'm the Executive Director of CIREIA. We have over 600 members, all active in or learning how to be active in real estate here in the Indiana market. This radio show is available on FM 95.9, AM 950, podcast on YouTube, and www.cireia.org. Join us each week as we talk about how you can make your money more active with better returns and help the community that you live in with real estate done the right way. Now, on with the show.
And welcome to the program. My name is Ron Watson. I am the board president for CIREIA, Central Indiana Real Estate Investors Association. Welcome to CIREIA's weekly show where we talk about investing in real estate the right way. We're here to help you understand the opportunities available to you in real estate investing, whether you're just getting started or a seasoned investor. Last week we talked to Ryan Johnson, Real Estate Investors Business Consultant. If you missed that episode, you can listen to it on the CIREIA channel on YouTube, or tune into it on our website, www.cireia.org, on the calendar of events. Joining us again today is one of the most successful rehabbers and coaches in Central Indiana, as well as a renowned poker player, Dave Short. Welcome again, Dave.
I'd like to think I'm a renowned poker player. I might not be a real estate investor, but great to be here.
And also joining us is Konstantin Linos, who is a private investment lender. We'll talk more about that momentarily, and owner of CPL Investments, LLC. Welcome, Konstantin.
Thanks, guys. Excited to be here.
And so we wanted to get started with this concept. We're going to talk a lot about money today and where you can get money and how you use money to invest in real estate. But why don't you give us a little bit of background about where you got started and how you got involved in lending?
All right. Well, this is kind of a long story, but I'll make it short. In 2006, I met my grandfather-in-law and was fascinated by him. He was a guy that just made money make money. So it was, I wanted to learn as much from him as I could. He invested in the stock market. He wasn't really a fisherman or a golfer, so his retirement was making his money make money. So he invested in the stock market, precious metals, notes and mortgages, all sorts of stuff, all across the board. And unfortunately, he passed in 2010. But I had the opportunity to learn a lot from him. But once he passed, the family had to decide what to do with the funds. It's easy to liquidate precious metals, stocks, but when it comes to notes and mortgages, it's a little more complicated. So the family reached out to myself and my father-in-law, Bart, and asked if there's something we could do about this to maximize the value. So Bart put his career on hold. I made my class schedule at Purdue make sense for this, and we tag teamed this together and started to maximize the value and get the loans to be to pay off. And while we were dwindling it down, I realized that there was an opportunity here. There was a niche. There was a place to build a business around this opportunity. So that's when CPL Investments was born in about 2010, and that's how I got into this.
Are you a real estate investor also, or is your investment in the mortgage field?
So we preach to our clients to stay in their own lane and keep their focus. So we like to practice what we preach, and so we do not invest in real estate. We've found our niche, and that's lending, and we stick to that.
Okay, but it's real estate related lending.
It's real estate related lending, and only on the investment side of things. Also, it doesn't make us competition to our clients.
Okay.
I just I know a lot of people probably wonder what the difference is between a private money lender, hard money lender, mortgage company, bank, all those kinds of things. And if you're relatively new to real estate investing, you may not know some of the differences there. Can you kind of expand upon that for us a little bit?
Sure. So before I get into the definitions, I'm kind of going to point out that we don't really fall into any of the categories of hard money, private lending, and definitely not conventional lenders or banks. We try to find the best of both, or best of all worlds, and try to put our borrowers first. So, from my definition of a hard money lender, it's more so institutional money, deeper pockets, usually out of state. There are more layers when it comes to bureaucracy. Things to look out for are points up front, and really understanding your fees before you get into working with a hard money lender. Private money lender. That's a very loose term, but the way we see it is more so of a joint venture partner, or someone that's got an IRA where they don't know what to do with it and wants to try out real estate. Usually a lack of experience, but you usually could get less cost or more cost effective when it comes to private money, because it is a little more risky and more volatile because of the lack of experience. And then, of course, banks, we all know how they work. That's definitely the lowest area of interest as far as interest that you're going to pay. They are probably the hardest to work with. I mean, you got to provide blood sample, hair sample, urine sample, fecal sample, and probably your firstborn child in order to get a loan. But those are the differences there. Now, one thing we do make sure we make clear to anyone who comes into our office is you got to explore your options. I mean, I do the same thing in your shoes. We're not going to be the right fit for every deal or every opportunity. So get out there, do your research, build your team, and have a good layer of lenders, or build a good financial team where you can turn to people in case if we don't have the funds or we can't do that type of deal. And it's there's enough deals to go around, so we don't mind if our other investors are looking around. We don't see it as cheating on us. So that's my definition of the main types of lenders, and I guess we'll get into a little bit later what makes us different.
Talk about the structure of your company and how it might be different from other investors.
Okay. So how we differentiate ourselves from the hard money, the private money, or the banks is, first of all, we like to see ourselves as a JV partner, but without splitting the fees at the end. So you get the benefits of having an actual partner that has knowledge and knows what's going on in the industry and has a lot of experience. But we're not going to want to split the profits with you. We just charge our interest and move on to the next deal. So that's the first difference with us. The other thing is we're really focused on. We used to be deal focused, but now we've shifted our focus to the borrower. We want to make sure that we're working with the right borrowers, and not only from the beginning, but help cultivate that borrower and help them grow their business. Whether you're building a widget or a trinket, all the business fundamentals are the same. So we're building a business, so are you. So we want to try to work with you and make sure that you are growing in the right way, not really just focusing on how many deals you're doing or what deals you're doing or what the next deal is. It's, are you ready for that next deal? Can you handle that next deal? How's your cash flow doing? Do you have the right team behind you? You cruise, so on and so forth. So I feel like that's what really differentiates us. Also, we definitely, like I mentioned before, add the value where we have seen a lot of things. We've seen things that work, and we've seen a lot of things that don't work. So we like to share that knowledge, pass it along, kind of from a coaching aspect too, where we review each deal, see what we can do better on both ends, and how we can improve moving forward. So that's our primary focus. And then if you've got a good base and a good foundation, the good deals will come, because we've got someone that is learning, getting experience now, backed with our experience and what we've seen. We'll hopefully avoid any of the major catastrophes when it comes to trying to grow a business in this arena.
Well, I'm guessing you're like most lenders. You don't want the property back. You want every lender or every investor that comes to you to be successful.
Correct. Absolutely. We're not in this game to get properties. We're just a lender. And that's the way we look at every deal. We look at every deal as, we don't want to get this back. We want to make sure that we don't. We do our best to make sure that you don't get into a deal that's not going to be a success. And we do that by walking through the property. We do that. We walk through every single property that we've ever lent on, and we will do so in the future. And we make sure that we run our ARVs. We have a good understanding of the deal, and then we even take it one step further, where we back our fees into the. We start from the back end when we calculate this deal to make sure it makes sense and include our fees, include real estate costs, really do above and beyond to make sure that you're going to make money on this deal. So that I feel like we definitely don't want to get these deals back.
It sounds like you could deal or help maybe a less seasoned investor make positive decisions on you because you have the ability to turn them down or say yes based on the transaction.
Yep, and we're very picky with who we work with because we can be. But one of the things that we look for is if you got that passion. If you come into our office and we can tell that, hey, you're going to be looking at one deal at a time or maybe just doing one deal because you saw a late night TV show and got excited about it, we're not going to feel that passion. We want to know why you're in this, why you're doing it, because that's what's going to create that long-term success and that long-term business relationship.
So, Dave, you may find this hard to believe, but I have a finance degree, believe it or not, and everyone's really impressed in the room here. But I'm just curious about how you underwrite, which is a finance term, your deals compared to like a bank. I mean, you're looking at the same qualities, attributes of a lender, of a borrower as a bank would, or is it different?
Well, I'd say it's different. We like to, when it comes to credit score, for example, we like to read between the lines. We're not fixated on a number. We like to see what kind of picture is painted here. If you pay your bills on time, things like that. We get it. We've all been through ups and downs. We understand that this is a tough business to be in. Especially 2008, I feel like nobody really came out of that unscathed. So we take that into consideration when we're underwriting our borrowers. Plus, the most important aspect of the underwriting process is the meeting. We do a one-on-one meeting. They can last anywhere from an hour to 2 hours, depending on the conversation. But that's where we really dive deep and see, is this individual someone that can make it? So I feel like that's what sets us apart.
And I know that to be true because I went through one of the meetings with these guys, and I'm thinking, come on, guys, I've done a few of these, but it's the same. It's the same program, and it helps. It helps us to establish a relationship, and they do what they say they're going to do.
Well, that's interesting because you kind of mentioned something that sounds like putting people on the hot seat, which we're going to be getting to here in just a few minutes with you, by the way.
Yeah, I love it.
I don't know if Vicki or anybody prepared you for that, but we do have a lot more questions for you. I know that as you talked about money, people get really interested in how they can get some of their own and what kind of process they have to go through to make that happen. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with more with Constantine right after this break. And welcome back to Real Talk. I am Ron Watson, president of the board of directors of CIREIA. And today we're speaking with Constantine Linos and Dave Short. I know Dave had a question regarding fees and some more questions around money. So I'll let Dave take over.
Well, maybe not necessarily fees, but a new investor wanting to come in, or even a seasoned investor, we see on TV you can buy real estate with no money down. I know that not necessarily to be true. So tell me how much money how much of their own funds are they going to have to come into a transaction with CPL?
All right. Well, based on that, I'm going to kind of go over a couple of reasons why, the main reasons based on our experience that we see investors fail, and it ties into the cash flow. So like I mentioned before, there's a lot of shiny objects in real estate. Find your lane, focus. Don't try to be a jack of all trades and a master of none. Growing too fast. It's you want to start a management company, start a real estate brokerage, have your investment company, all that stuff. I mean, to the point where you're kind of losing track of your main focus again. And then cash flow. Cash flow is a big issue and one of the main reasons we see people fail. And then another one is becoming a member of the Buyers Anonymous Club. So you definitely don't want to do that.
Define that. I love the term. So
just buying too much. We see there's people get that adrenaline rush or that instant gratification or satisfaction from finding that deal and buying it without really looking at the consequences or making sure that they have the infrastructure or the cash flow or the crews or the ability to actually do that deal, and they end up having way too many deals and get overloaded.
Okay.
So back to the fees and money into the game. So we typically look we prefer our borrowers to have about 10 to 20% skin in the game is a good way to look at it. I don't like putting specific numbers on questions like that, but I feel like that's a good rule of thumb. And the reason being is you got to have enough cash in your reserves in order to not only buy the deal, but also to cash flow it. So if you're not able to put down about 10% or maybe 20%, then it might not be the right deal for you. Another thing to look out for is sometimes the best deals you do are the ones you don't. So there'll always be another deal coming along the lines.
You know, if you're driving around and you see a deal or a house that's for sale and you think, I can probably buy that house and make it look beautiful like Dave does every day of the week, is there a size that makes sense for you? I mean, do you guys looking at a sweet spot, or does it matter if it's a $50,000 house or $1 million house or somewhere in between? Where do you guys kind of specialize?
We're all over the board when it comes to that. It really just depends on the investor or the borrower, what they're able to do, what their structure can handle. I mean, we really do get that detailed in it. I mean, it's just because it's a great deal doesn't mean it's the right deal.
Tell us about your biggest one. What's your biggest loan you guys have ever made?
So our biggest loan we've ever made is just under $1 million, multifamily apartment complex, about 46 units, somewhere around there, where they gutted it, rehabbed the entire thing, and got it fully tenanted and cash flowing and refied us out.
Cool. What about timing? If somebody finds a deal, and usually what I hear from Dave and other investors is you gotta move quick if it's a good deal, right? So you don't have 6 months to wait to figure out how you're going to put the money together. If somebody comes to you, are you able to turn around the deal pretty quickly, or what kind of timing are we looking at?
Well, that's a really good question. We're very process oriented, and that's going to come out in our when we discuss what our core values are as a company. But we have a process for everything, and if it all depends on how quickly the borrower and the investor follows that process. If they get us everything we need, and they follow those steps, we can close within 2 weeks. And we do provide proof of funds letters, so you can get the project locked down. Our sequence does not begin until after we get a fully executed purchase agreement.
Can an investor sit down with you, hoping to find a property, and then as long as it fits your criteria, you'll lend, where you've already vetted the guy, which might save a day or two in the process?
Absolutely. We prefer that. I mean, that just shows that the person is taking the necessary steps to, like I said earlier, build that team and get that out of the way. So we prefer to see that, where people come in, apply, get approved, and are ready to bring that next deal, because, like you said, time is of the essence. And if you get that step out of the way, you're going to be a lot more successful in hitting that goal as far as timing.
Yeah, I'm curious about the money available. So is this a good time? I know the market's really hot right now in central Indiana. Is there a lot of money available to do deals, or are there any limitations that people should worry about?
As far as the money that we have available?
Yeah, from you guys.
That's a tough question, because we get payoffs and do deals left and right. So at this point, it's definitely a hot market.
Yep.
We've got deals. We've definitely got deals lined up. But it's amazing how it always happens that we, at the same time as deals are going out, deals are coming back in, and that means that the process is working and the system is working to where the borrowers are really executing at that right time. So we're pretty much, if you got a good deal, we're going to find the funds to do it.
You talked about this just briefly in the beginning, but can you give us a little better idea of where does some of that money come from?
Yeah, a lot of the money is family money, and now we've branched out to close friends. Company money, close friends, and family money really is what it boils down to. So it's not institutional funds; it's people that we know and we trust and we work with very closely.
So you're an at-home decision maker.
Absolutely. Buck stops here. This is up in Carmel. It's our World, International, and Universal headquarters. So there's no hierarchy.
Okay, what do you see? And maybe it's jumping ahead of our segments a little bit, but what's the hot spots in Indianapolis? Where do you see a lot of the transactions coming from, and where you're getting your source of leads for these transactions?
Yeah, so obviously the hot spots are the hot spots. So we see Fountain Square, Bates Hendricks, Sobro's big right now. Heron Morton, we get a lot of our business there, but we're starting to see people kind of go outside of the loop. I mean, we're looking at Martinsville. We're pretty much, as long as it doesn't take us more than an hour and a half to 2 hours to drive there, we'll pretty much drive anywhere. But we're seeing deals in this kind of market. Deals are out there to be found. So.
Okay. Are there any obstacles for me as a new lender when I come in to meet with you and say, hey, I've got this property. I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for me, but I haven't done anything like this before. Are you able to kind of help walk those kinds of people through that process? Are you reticent to do that if it's a new investor, or what's your feeling about somebody in that category?
So I love to coach, and I love to coach whether people want to hear it or not. So absolutely, that's one of my things I enjoy doing. If we've got someone that's got the potential and they can do it, we will definitely share all the knowledge that we have and the experiences that we've been through. Especially if it's an investor that has experience in this, but might be trying something different, might be stepping outside of their box, might be instead of remodeling, they're kind of following the market trends and say, hey, let's try a new build out. We have investors that have made those transitions. We've had investors that have stepped into new arenas. And since we do quite a few loans, we see a lot. We see a lot, like I said, a lot of things that work and a lot of things that don't. So we definitely pass that knowledge along and try to make sure that we learn from other people's mistakes, and we share that information because we don't have enough time to all make them ourselves.
So if we talked more about maybe buying something, flipping it, rehabbing it, and kind of getting in and out of a deal, but are you also okay with working with people that are wanting to be landlords and keep a property for long terms, or how do you structure a deal like that?
So we definitely do bridge financing. So you want to buy the asset, add value to it, put a tenant in it. And where we come into play there, usually an exit strategy is where we help them get it to that point, and then they get it refinanced out by a more traditional bank who will look at it once the improvements have been done, the value's been added, and it's cash flowing.
So once all the hard work's done, then they'll be happy to come help us.
Then they'll step in, exactly.
Do you make sure, following that a little bit further, do you make sure that these clients of yours are able to go, you think they're able to go get a loan with a conventional lender? Correct.
Yeah, we're not going to set anybody up for failure when it comes to that. We definitely are looking ahead, making sure that their credit is, worthy of a conventional loan. But banks are picky. They don't like to touch things that don't pass inspection. They don't like to touch things that aren't pretty. So if it's not pretty and it's not cash flowing, that's where we come into play to help out and get you to that point. But we definitely make sure that it is a viable plan and a viable option.
So you're a short-term lender by nature.
Correct, absolutely.
Short-term being less than a year?
6 months to a year. I'd say a year is our sweet spot.
Okay.
And so speaking of sweet spot, I mean, are you looking at most of your investors are rehabbers or flippers, or is that kind of where you're seeing most of the people that are coming to you?
Yeah, most of them are rehabbers and flippers. We work with developers. We work with, like we mentioned just a second ago, people who want to buy and hold, people that want to, add value and maybe turn it into an Airbnb. Those are the types of people that we work with. We don't do any primary lending. We're strictly focused on the investment side of things.
So you'll lend on somebody that's going to do an Airbnb?
Yep.
Are you getting any requests for those?
We're, in the past, I'd say 2-3 months, we're definitely getting more and more requests for them. And we're seeing them come across our table quite a bit.
So we're going to have a lot more questions for you after this break. We have actually the hot seat segment coming up. We've got a tip of the week that you're going to give to us here in just a few minutes as well. And we have a lot more questions for Constantine right after these messages. And welcome back to Real Talk. I am Ron Watson, president of the board of directors of CIREIA. And today we're talking to Constantine Linos and Dave Short. And Constantine, before the break, you mentioned a concept that I wanted to make sure we delve into a little bit more deeply, and that was the idea of bridge loan, bridge financing. Kind of, can you give us a little bit more details about what that means and what that's about?
Sure, yeah. So bridge lending is pretty simple. It's where you start with point A and you need to get to point B, and we're that tool that's going to help you get there. And an example is something we mentioned earlier, where your goal is to have a long-term rental, and we're not set up for that. We're not your best option to have something long-term, since we are short-term. So you buy that property that with us, using us, that might not be approved by a conventional lender who would be a better long-term source. You buy that property, secure it, add value to it, improve it, and then put a tenant in there, make it to where it's cash flowing, and then a bank will be interested in it, and then you refinance yourself out of it, and then it gets you into that long-term solution. There goes the bridge. We get you from the point where it is not attractive to a bank. We help you get it to their standards, and then you got that long-term investment that you were looking for.
You're the middleman.
We're the middleman. Yep.
Okay, cool. Another thing that I want to talk a little bit more about, I know me personally, when I'm an investor, I always have 3 exit strategies on every property before I buy them, because if it doesn't go like I want it to go, I want to do this, and maybe the property lends itself to something else that's maybe not traditional. Tell me how you vet and talk to your, maybe that's the wrong word, but talk to your people that come to you for lending about exit strategies.
All right, definitely. This kind of goes into one of our core values, and that's communication. We're very straightforward, full disclosure, full transparency, and one of those things that people kind of put on the back burner or don't like to talk about is their exit strategies. Not everything goes exactly the way we plan, so we got to have some backup plan or multiple backup plans, like you have 3 of them. That's excellent. That's exactly what we look for. Someone that's really looked ahead and then came up with solutions just in case if their first plan doesn't work. So for an example would be, if your goal is to buy and flip a home, you'll also, aside from running it through the process and your spreadsheets to make sure that it is a good flip, you want to have an exit strategy or backup plan to where that if for some reason this home sits on the market and doesn't really pan out the way you want, you run that same exact project through a rental scope to make sure that if it did not work out as a flip, you could have that backup plan or that exit strategy to where you can turn it into a rental, cash flow it, and then maybe get it to the point where you can refinance this out. That's a situation, that's a scenario or an example to where your primary focus is to flip it. But if you don't get that or reach that goal, or that objective doesn't pan out, then you know that you can then turn that into a rental and buy yourself some more time.
I know you work with CIREIA, and you're a CIREIA vendor, and you work with a lot of our investors. Do you require the borrowers to be local?
Yes, we prefer. We're big on face to face. We like to sit down and meet with everybody, and anyone we work with, we've met with at least a couple times. So we prefer to be local. We've worked with out of state borrowers before, but we've just seen that if you don't have the boots on the ground, it's just a world that it's very difficult to manage if you're out of state or you're not local.
What kind of stuff, I'll call it, scope of work, schematics, does the new borrower have to bring to you before you approve a transaction?
Great question. So we, like I said, we're very process oriented. So with every property, we have a property questionnaire, which asks questions that we've talked about earlier, as far as what's your exit strategy, your estimated timeline, the requested loan amount, your estimated improvement costs. But we also require a few items that we need. We need a fully executed purchase agreement, like we mentioned before. We do offer proof of funds letters, but our process does not begin until you actually have the property under contract. We need a detailed breakdown of the renovation costs or schematics, like you mentioned, as far as a drawing or a good a picture of what you're going to do with the property, how you're going to improve it, what value you're going to add to it.
Do you do that on site, or do you do that typically in your office?
As far as collecting the stuff?
Well, just the meeting with the borrower for scope of work as you're on a specific property.
We'll do it in a couple ways. Obviously, the first meeting with the borrower is going to be at the office. But when it comes to meeting for the scope of work, if the borrower uses a general contractor, we will take the bid, or we'll take the breakdown that the general contractor provides for them, and then we will walk through it. So we don't necessarily need to be there with the borrower. If they want to be there, they can add value by kind of painting the picture for us and showing us where this project's going. That works great. But if they're doing the work themselves, which we do work with people who will do the work themselves, so you don't have to use a GC every time. But if you do the work yourself, we'll walk through the property with you, so we make sure that we see your vision, and that everything's aligned with what we see in the property, as far as if we notice some big ticket items. Now, we're not going to be getting into the nitty gritty and what tile you're using or the colors you're choosing, but we're keeping an eye out for you when it comes to the big ticket items. Now, we'll do that regardless of if it's you that's remodeling it or the general contractor. We still try to make sure that the GC didn't miss anything either, as far as, again, big ticket items, roof, HVAC, maybe a dead tree in the front yard that nobody noticed. Those things add up. So we'll walk the property. We'll look through the list of the items that you guys are going to do for the rehab, and we'll really add any value that we can bring.
So you're telling us you can work with the little guy.
Yep, absolutely. We can work with a little guy who's doing them themselves, but our goal is to show them their value, and their value is not on the job site. It's finding those deals, building that company, growing. So in order to grow, we try to help them. We work with them at that point, but we try to have them see the value of hiring out that general contractor so they can get out and add more value to their business.
Okay.
Are you okay if somebody wants to come meet with you guys, and maybe they're not quite ready to do a deal, but they want to understand how you guys work and your process and all those things? And you're okay with just spending a little bit of time with somebody? Maybe he's a new investor and he wants to understand the process a little bit better, and you can help educate him?
Absolutely. That kind of goes back to what we were talking about. We're being proactive. If you know you want to do this, and this is something that you're going to get into, but you haven't quite found that right deal, be patient. Don't jump into anything. You don't need to bring a deal to us in order to meet with us. We like it when people act proactively, and while they're building their team, come in and you know what? It's really an interview for us as it is for them. We're really looking to see that we can work well together as a team. Not just, is this someone we want to work with? So absolutely, if you want to come in and get that out of the way, kind of see what we're about, learn from us, we're more than happy to do that, because it gets one of the steps out of the way for us.
Yeah, so it's good to build that relationship prior to when you actually need it.
Absolutely, and that goes to be said with any relationship. Whether it's you want to build your accounting team, you want to build your legal team, you want to build your agents that are bringing you leads. Get out there, meet people, build that team. Whether you want to, whether you've got a legal issue right now or not, it's good to have that team or that pipeline built.
Who needs to be? What kind of people are you looking for that they have on their team, the new investor?
Well, we're looking to make sure that they've got a good solid contractor, depending on if they're going to do the work or not, or at least a plan there. Like we know with contractors right now, the market's pretty hot, so they're hard to find. They're over promising and underperforming. So it's good to have a layer of contractors, a backup plan, and a legal team. We look to make sure that everyone's got a good legal team set up. We look to make sure that everyone's got a good accounting team set up. Those usually come later, depending on where you are and as far as your business growth. But I'd say the most important things is you want to have a good lending team, a good contracting team, and a good team to feed your pipeline, whether it's real estate agents or whatever method you find to feed that pipeline. So those are the three main things we look for.
Yeah, so I'm going to interject as a president of CIREIA. Those types of connections and relationships are really very well developed in an organization like CIREIA, which is where I think a lot of value out of our group comes in. I mean, people get to meet other people that are in different areas of real estate investing, and they can build that team. So when they're ready to go out there and pound the pavement, they've got everything that they need put together. I just had a quick question. We have about a minute and a half left in this segment, but I wanted to know if I'm an owner-occupied type of a borrower that maybe wants to buy something, live in it, rehab it, and then sell it. Is that something that you guys can also work with?
We can. We prefer not to, because that kind of there's a fine line when it comes to where we don't work with primary owners or people who are looking to purchase their primary residence. So plans change. Back to that exit strategy. Just because you're living in it now and your plan is to move out doesn't mean that's going to happen. So we don't want to get stuck in a situation to where we have a loan on our books that is a primary loan. Mm-hmm. So what we do in that case is exit strategy, like we talked about and defined earlier. We really want to make sure that you have a solid exit strategy or multiple solid exit strategies to make sure that we're not put in that position.
Well, and I think that definitely helps the investor as well, right? Because if that's really their intention and maybe something that doesn't go well, at least they have some options like Dave mentioned where he has 3 exit strategies for every deal that he does, and you guys can make sure that they're not sitting there stuck in a place that they don't necessarily want to be for the next year and a half.
Well, and wouldn't you agree that that person that comes to you with that request, you're going to refer them on if they have a decent credit score. There's better options for them at a much lower rate to have a house that's a primary residence.
Absolutely. We have relationships with smaller banks who are easier to work with that we refer that kind of stuff to all the time. Because if it's a situation where you can get a better deal, that just builds our relationship, and there's enough deals to go around. So it's something that we definitely see value in. So we will, if we see that it's pointing the direction where this is a better deal for a smaller bank, which would be a better deal for the borrower, that's where we're going to push you.
So that's Constantine Linos, and we're going to put you on the hot seat when we get back after this break. But we have a lot more questions for you right after these messages. And welcome back to Real Talk. I am Ron Watson, president of the board of directors of CIREIA. We're speaking with Constantine Linos and Dave Short. And I know Dave's been working with you guys recently, and he had a couple questions he wanted to ask you as well.
Well, I want to talk, after making a quick comment, I'd love for you to talk about the core values of your company. Having worked with you on 3 transactions, everybody loves working for you. You have a tremendous in-office staff with Georgia and Bart, and your dog even likes me, and dogs don't like me. So that says a lot for your dog, so I'm okay. But you've got a great team, and they love working for you. So that goes with core values, I know. So talk to us about that.
So our core values are our relationship and team, like you mentioned. We put a lot of value in our internal team and kind of creating a good environment, and we do the same thing for what we call our external team, and those are our investors or our borrowers that we work with. We try to build that long-term relationship to make it last, so we can do many deals, rinse and repeat, and constantly improve and hopefully make it a win-win, and so we can have continued business. Another core value, like we mentioned before, is communication. We feel like straightforwardness, full disclosure, full transparency is the best and only way to do business, so there's nothing left on the table and there's no confusion. And everybody is clear on what the goal and objective is and what the expectations are. And then systems and processes, we're very big on that, and we advocate for that a lot, that we're constantly improving, constantly growing. We love to hear feedback, criticism, what would make your lives easier as investors and borrowers, and we do the same for our internal team. And we try to build those systems and processes because that's the way that you're going to make sure you don't make the same mistakes twice. So we push that on our borrowers too, to share the knowledge and the experience that we have from creating our own systems and processes. And hopefully, if we follow these values, it'll create a win-win scenario for everybody, and hopefully mitigate risk and failure as much as possible.
So given those core values, which are outstanding, by the way, and it's good to hear that your dog likes Dave. That's always important. It's now time for the hot seat.
The dog's the first litmus test.
Well, that's why if the dog licks him when he comes in, then that's a good thing, right? That's
a good borrower.
That's part of your process.
Right.
But I want to know some things that I'm sure some of the listeners are wondering about, such as fees and costs related to doing business with you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So we don't really have a boilerplate, and the reason we don't have a set structure as far as what points, interest, and doc fee and all that stuff is because every deal is different. Not every deal will be set up to be successful with certain terms. So we try to cater each deal with specific terms depending on the size, the scope of work, the size of the project, all those things. We take those variables into consideration. But just to dive right into it, we do have a doc fee that is that's due up front. That's the only fee that we charge up front, and that ranges. It starts at $1,080, and it goes up in increments of about $500 depending on how much you borrow. Our monthly payments are interest only, and this definitely depends on the size of the loan, but it ranges anywhere from 8 to 15% interest only payments, and we do interest only for cash flow purposes, obviously. And then we charge points and arrears. And a good way of looking at it is a percentage of the total loan amount. So our points are anywhere from 3 to 10%, or 3 to 10 points, or 3 to 10% of the total loan amount, and that depends mostly on the timeline of the project, how quickly you get the project paid off. So we like to use those points to set realistic goals and realistic deadlines that are also still an incentive for you to hit, because we know in this business time is money. So we try to structure that to be beneficial and realistic, but also to be a target to shoot for, so you're getting these deals done in an appropriate amount of time.
Talk about arrears.
All right, so we charge the points and arrears for a few reasons. Most of the time you'll see lenders or hard money lenders charging those points up front. And now from a strictly financial standpoint, or a finance standpoint, that makes the most sense. As a lender, you get your money up front, your risk is reduced, and then you can invest it in the next loan, right? But this goes along with our core values that we charge our points and arrears for a few reasons. One is cash flow. If you got to come up with that down payment, you got to pay that doc fee, you got to pay the closing costs. We don't want to add those points into the mix. So helps keep your cash flow, so you can maintain the deal. Another reason is you make the bulk of your money at the end of the deal, and it feels better if we're in it with you, and we're going to make the money at the end of the deal, make the bulk of our money at the end of the deal as well. That's the second reason. And the third, which I believe is the most important, is if we were to get our points up front, that changes our mindset. Our mindset is we're in this together. We want to make sure this deal succeeds. And we structured this deal together, so we want to keep our mind in this deal. So we're going to charge our points in arrears, so we don't lose that focus by saying, "Hey, we got the bulk of our money, so now if the deal doesn't succeed, our risk is much lower." So this way, it keeps our head in the game too, all the way to the end with you guys.
Because of the process you described earlier, which was very, very well done. Schematics, you take people through a defined and repeatable process. When you work with them, you probably don't have a lot of things that go wrong, but sometimes they do, right? So what are some examples, or maybe just the only time you ever had any bad example? I don't know. But tell us what can go wrong, or maybe what has gone wrong on an occasion.
And back to I mentioned earlier the three main reasons why we see investors fail in this business, and it's I'd say if I had to pick the top one, it's probably cash flow, where you bring on too many deals and you can't handle them and you can't cash flow them, and that's kind of a domino effect. And once you bring on 1, 2, 3, 4 too many deals on, and you're trying to find cash to maintain those, that's where you either grew too fast or didn't set up red flags for yourself. But that's one of the main reasons we've seen people fail.
Well, what about a success story on the other hand? I mean, is there some deal that sticks out in your mind that hey, this went really well, and we like to share that with people?
Yeah. So one of my favorite stories is this gentleman was one of our first investors or borrowers. We actually came on around early 2011, and he started with single family home. Then he moved up to a little bit multifamily, doing duplexes, triplexes, and we saw his business start to grow. And he followed the same processes we were, and we learned a lot from him. And we had a good good communication, had good gelling, had a good relationship. So as we grew, he was growing. And that first loan I think was probably around $50,000, and you guys asked what our largest loan was, and this is with that guy who's just skyrocketed by creating the right systems, creating the right processes, being disciplined, not buying the wrong deal, being patient. And one of the things he likes to say is real estate's like a bus stop. There'll always be another bus. So don't jump on that deal unless you know it's a good one. So he's doing, right now he's doing multi-million-dollar projects. He's pretty much strictly in multifamily, and I'd say he's probably one of our best success stories.
So this may be a tough question for you, but it is hot seat, so we're going to give it a shot. Do you have any insight, crystal ball, as to what you see coming down the pike or in the near future here in Indiana?
Well, if I actually had a crystal ball, we wouldn't be sitting here because I'd have all the answers. But I'm just going to point out one thing here is that this is an incredible market. This is we're at a very high point here. And if you're getting into this as a real estate, if you're getting into this market right now as a real estate investor, you need to keep that in mind. You're in a market now where you can make mistakes that would otherwise break you in a normal environment, but in this environment you can survive them. Where it's good from a learning experience standpoint, but you need to keep that in mind and be cognizant about it, because you never know when the market's going to turn. I feel like we've hit some I consider maxes in areas, or some high points, and the saying that the only way to go when you're up is down. So just be careful of that, be cognizant of it, have exit strategies, have backup plans, be conservative, wait for those right deals, and don't be impatient, because the market I feel like is getting to the point where it's either plateauing or going to plateau. And like I said, the only way when you're up is down. So,
well, hard to believe, but we're almost out of time in this segment. And I did want to give you an opportunity to provide the listeners a tip of the week and your contact information so they can reach out to you as well.
All right. Well, one of my favorite sayings to put out there is sometimes the best deals you do are the ones you don't. So keep that in mind. So our contact information, we're located in Carmel on Keystone and Carmel Drive, 4-story brick building right next to McDonald's there. And our office number is 317-846-4131. You'll more than likely get our office manager, Stephanie. And our email address is admin, ADMIN, @cplinvestments.com.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And David, before we leave, did you want to give our listeners your contact information as well?
My contact by email is dshort@c21sheets, that's spelled SCHEETZ.com. And I can be reached by cell also, 317-590-4499.
Thank you both for joining us today. And this week at CIREIA, we have our monthly main meeting on Thursday the 7th. It's our annual roundtable event where we have local experts from every craft, such as rehabbing, wholesaling, lending, insurance, at tables around the room. Attendees spend 10 minutes at each table and move from table to table to gain tons of information on various topics. I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today and listening out there, and we will speak with you all again next week.